Well, hello there and welcome to this GCSE History revision lesson on the topic of Germany and the Depression. This lesson focuses on the failure of Weimar Democracy. Okay, let's find out more about this topic. We're going to be looking at the election results during this time, and crucially we're going to be looking at the role of Franz von Papen and Paul von Hindenburg, and also the other right-wing force at the time, and their role in terms of appointing Hitler as Chancellor on the 30th of January 1933. Let's go. So it's really important, I think, to understand the different election results in Germany between 1928 and 1932. So you can see here that in May 1928, the Nazis only got 12 seats, but by July 1932, they peak at 230 seats in terms of the last elections before Hitler is appointed Chancellor. Meanwhile, you can see that the support of political parties like the Social Democrats, that were seen as the party that was sort of most behind the Weimar Republic, that's steadily dropping into 1932. But other political parties like the Democratic Party, for example, their support was dropping. Those parties that are coloured in green, they were the political parties that normally associate the Weimar Republic. The ones in a more orangey colour, like the Communists and the National Party, the DNVP and the Nazi Party, you can see that their support is growing during this time. So there's a move in the early 1930s to political parties that are unsupportive of the Weimar Republic, and particularly a move to the more extreme political parties. So on the left wing, the Communist Party, and obviously on the right wing, the Nazi Party. So you can see the Communists in May 1928 had 54 seats, and that moves up to 100 in November 1932. So the other thing to be aware of is who's actually in charge during this time. So Hermann Müller, who is from the SPD, he is the Chancellor from May 1928 to March 1930. He's then replaced by Heinrich Brüning from the Centre Party, who rules from March 1930 to May 1932. He's then replaced by Franz von Papen. He's then very briefly replaced by General Kurt von Schleicher, who had no political party. He was a military general. And then Adolf Hitler is appointed on the 30th of January 1933. And it's really interesting to note that when Chancellor and Brüning and von Papen and Schleicher are in charge, this is very much presidential government. They rely on the use of Article 48. So you can see here that essentially Weimar Democracy pretty much ends in 1930. It pretty much ends actually after the September 1930 election. And that election basically makes it impossible for the Weimar Republic to function because of the increase in the support of political parties like the Communists and the Nazis that are unsympathetic to the Weimar Republic and don't support the Weimar Republic. So one of the key features during this time is the Weimar Republic can't solve the problems of the Great Depression. There are many political parties. Remember, the system of proportional representation meant there's lots of political parties that get elected. So there is this reliance on President Hindenburg and the use of Article 48, which from the Weimar Constitution means the president can rule in an emergency. So let's find out the process of what happened when Hitler was appointed Chancellor. So it's important to understand these key individuals that are crucial in Hitler being appointed Chancellor. So there's Paul von Hindenburg. He was elected president of the Weimar Republic in both 1925 and 1932. Now, he very much did not trust Hitler. He felt that Hitler was a bit of an upstart. He didn't think that he was the right person to rule Germany. So he would have to be persuaded to appoint Hitler Chancellor. And they resist for a long time in appointing Hitler Chancellor. So I think it's really important to note that after the July 1932 election, when the Nazis are the largest party and they have 230 seats in the Reichstag, that Hitler is not appointed Chancellor at that stage, and there's a reason for that, and it's because Hindenburg does not trust Hitler. He does not think he's the right person to be the leader of Germany. There's Heinrich Brüning there. He's the leader of the Centre Party. He replaced Hermann Müller on the 30th of March 1930. And after the September 1930 election, he essentially has to rule Germany through Article 48. So he's the sort of main leader that tries to cope with all the problems of the Great Depression in terms of reducing wages for government workers, increasing taxes, for example. And he rules Germany until the 30th of May 1932. Franz von Papen then becomes leader of the Centre Party, replacing Brüning. He's appointed the Chancellor on the 1st of June 1932. He had an aristocratic background, so he's very much acceptable to President Hindenburg, that represents many of those traditional conservative forces in Germany. Now, Franz von Papen is the person that persuades Hindenburg to appoint Hitler Chancellor in January 1933. So his role in Hitler becoming Chancellor is absolutely crucial. And then there's Kurt von Schleicher, who was Chancellor from a very brief period between December 1932 and January 1933, 28th of January 1933, but he struggles to win support. And he's basically got rid of when von Papen sort of moves behind the scenes to persuade Hindenburg to get rid of Kurt von Schleicher and appoint Hitler as Chancellor. So I think it's really important to understand how Chancellor Brüning tries to tackle the economic problem. So when he becomes the Chancellor, he tries to cut unemployment pay and raise taxes. Now, the Social Democrats refuse to support this, and this is why Brüning calls this very famous election in September 1930, from which the Nazis become the second largest party in the Reichstag, winning 107 seats, and that makes it harder to run Germany. And it's as a result of this that between 1930 and 1932, they have to resort to the use of Article 48. Now, President Hindenburg refuses to put the Nazis in the government. He doesn't want them there. He doesn't trust them. So Brüning relies on Article 48 to run the country. It is, I think you pretty much make an argument that it is an emergency. But eventually Brüning angers Hindenburg when he proposes to give land to poorer peasants. Remember, Hindenburg represents those traditional conservative forces. So Brüning is then replaced by Franz von Papen. Now, in July 1932, there's another election. The Nazis win 37% of the vote and 230 seats, become the largest party in the Reichstag, but still Hindenburg refuses to appoint Hitler Chancellor, and von Papen continues. He has little support, though, and struggles to rule effectively at all. Another election is called. Now, this is really interesting because in this election, the Nazis lose 2 million votes, and they win 33% of the vote, 196 seats. Now, they're still the largest party, but still Hindenburg resists appointing Hitler Chancellor. And this attempt to have Kurt von Schleicher as the Chancellor, a military man, he replaces von Papen as Chancellor, but he also massively struggles to win support and rules, as Chancellor for a very short period of time between December and January, December 32 and January 33. So at the end of 1932, von Papen sees an opportunity to gain revenge on what he sees as the betrayal by Kurt von Schleicher. So he begins to hold secret meetings with Hitler, and they come up with a plan to form a new government with Hitler as Chancellor and von Papen as Vice-Chancellor. Now, Franz von Papen completely underestimates Hitler, and he feels that once Hitler becomes Chancellor, that he can be controlled by himself and by the conservative forces within Germany. So von Papen goes to see President Hindenburg, and he presents this plan to President Hindenburg that Hindenburg should appoint Hitler Chancellor and Franz von Papen should be Vice-Chancellor. And so this is what happens. On the 30th of January 1933, the aging President Hindenburg appoints Hitler Chancellor, and one of the things that they do, because von Papen persuades Hindenburg that Hitler could be controlled, is they only actually have 3 Nazis in the cabinet out of 12. Now, this is crucial because, again, there is this sense that we won't have many Nazis in the actual cabinet, and the cabinet is basically the most important government ministers within Germany at that time, because they feel that they can just control the Nazis. Wealthy businessmen and landowners, they support the plan because, crucially, they feel that the Nazis can protect Germany from the threat of communism, which they see as a greater threat. So it's important to note that despite the increase in electoral support, what actually leads to Hitler being appointed Chancellor is this sort of behind-the-scenes political deal that goes on under the influence of Franz von Papen. Now, I really think this cartoon is very interesting because it very much shows some of the kind of forces at work here. So the title of the cartoon is Fahrschule Hugenberg, which means Hugenberg's driving school. Now, Alfred Hugenberg is important. He's the leader of the German National People's Party, the DNVP, but he's also a media tycoon, and he is seen, along with Franz von Papen, as sort of crucial to this sort of right-wing forces that appoint Hitler Chancellor, but they only do it because they feel that they can control Hitler. So you can see here the idea of the appointment, I suppose, is that Hitler will feel he's in the driving seat, but it'll actually be people like Franz von Papen and Hugenberg and other right-wing conservative forces that will actually be in control. And of course, they're going to be proved massively wrong. The caption says Hindenburg to Papen is saying, let that newcomer up front think he's doing the steering. The real control of the economy is in our hands. And it's interesting to note that Hindenburg and von Papen were also a member of Hitler's cabinet in January 1933. So this is one of the reasons why Hitler was actually appointed Chancellor, is because of these political manoeuvres behind the scenes with the right-wing forces. And this obviously adds a bit of weight to the idea that fear of communism is a key factor for how Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. But it's also to do with the sort of individual political intrigue with people like Franz von Papen at the time as well. So that's the story of how Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany in January 1933. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and good luck. Bye-bye.